All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really critical geopolitical shift, the evolving India-Australia maritime security framework. Think of this as your primary strategic briefing and visual memory system. We're going to keep the information density high throughout, because the goal here is to maximize your conceptual clarity and really sharpen your analytical thinking for those high-pressure exam scenarios. So, let's get into how these two nations are basically rewiring the security architecture of the entire Indian Ocean region. Here is a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll cover the Indo-Pacific strategic context, maritime access and logistics, security and geopolitical calculus, India's balancing strategy, the future of mini-lateral cooperation, and finally, we'll wrap up with a rapid exam revision and recall session. Section 1. Indo-Pacific Strategic Context and the Converging Visions in the Indian Ocean region.
Now, you have to remember that this India-Australia maritime partnership doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It is deeply anchored to a shared Indo-Pacific vision. Both of these nations are absolutely committed to maintaining a free, open, and rules-based maritime region. And what's crucial here is that this bilateral initiative actually complements existing security setups, most notably the Quad, where India and Australia are already operating alongside the US and Japan. So what we're looking at is the building of a multi-layered security web.
So, what's actually accelerating this integration right now? Well, we can isolate three main shared strategic triggers. First up, you've got overarching regional security concerns, mostly driven by shifting power dynamics. Second, there's the absolute non-negotiable necessity of sea lane stability. I mean, the entire global economy relies on uninterrupted maritime trade routes, right? And third, the urgent need for geopolitical balancing, specifically within the Indian Ocean region, or IOR. These aren't just abstract ideas. They are the immediate, real-world catalyst driving this bilateral convergence.
Section 2. Maritime Access and Logistics, Operationalizing the Geography.
Okay, so how do these broad strategic triggers translate into actual on-the-ground, or rather on-the-water, mechanics? It boils down to three highly specific tactical areas. First, enhanced naval access. This literally allows ships from both navies to use each other's military infrastructure. Second, integrated logistics support. This is a game changer because it dramatically extends the operational range and endurance of their fleets. And third, maritime domain awareness, or MDA. Think of MDA as the central nervous system of maritime security. It ensures both nations have a comprehensive, real-time picture of literally everything happening across the ocean's surface. Geography is absolutely paramount when you're trying to recall this stuff. Take a look at this official map representation of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Australia is actively pushing for greater operational access here. Why? Because these islands act like a sovereign sentinel looking right over the Malacca Strait, which is one of the most critical maritime choke points in the world. Controlling the intelligence and operational flow right here, that is a massive strategic advantage. And all of this builds operational integration through a very logical escalation ladder. It starts with step 1, intelligence sharing. They merge their data streams for better domain awareness. That naturally flows into step 2, coordinated patrols, where actual physical assets are out there securing the sea lanes in tandem. And finally, that leads to step 3, expanded joint exercises. This is where they really test their complex warfighting and deterrence capabilities. It's just a highly systematic way to integrate two entirely independent military forces.
Moving on to Section 3, Security and Geopolitical Calculus, the Strategic Rationale.
Now, it's fascinating because both nations are taking converging actions, but they're driven by distinctly different motivations. Let's contrast them. On the Australia side, the rationale is all about diversifying their strategic footprint well beyond the Pacific to counter Chinese influence in these vital corridors. But on the India side, the rationale is about securing the Indian Ocean region and operationalizing its mandated role as a net security provider. So you have two different geopolitical starting points that are converging into one unified maritime strategy.
And right at the core of this calculus is a term you absolutely must remember: interoperability. It is not just about having ships floating in the same ocean. It's the validated, tested ability of Indian and Australian naval forces to operate synergistically. This shared situational awareness doesn't just passively monitor the region, it actively strengthens deterrence. And deterrence is the whole point here, right? It's about preventing conflict by demonstrating a unified, highly capable maritime front.
Section 4. India's Balancing Strategy, Act East and Regional Order.
We also have to see how this international treaty loops directly back into India's domestic and foreign policy architecture. This partnership isn't isolated. It's a direct operationalization of India's Act East policy. Act East is essentially the framework for reinforcing diplomatic, economic, and hard security commitments all throughout the Indo-Pacific. Deepening ties with Australia? It's a textbook execution of this policy, pushing India's strategic perimeter outward.
To make it simple, we can distill India's strategic imperatives down to three main pillars. First, to actively balance the regional power structure amidst all these evolving geopolitical challenges. Second, to firmly establish its status as a net security provider. That basically means India wants to export security to the region, not just consume it. And third, to guarantee the maintenance of free sea lanes. And remember, that last point ties directly into the economic security and the fragile supply chains of the entire nation.
Section 5. Future of Mini-Lateral Cooperation, the Institutional Trajectory. So where is this all heading? The institutional trajectory unfolds in 3 clear steps. We started with Step 1, a shared Quad vision among 4 nations. That broad alignment facilitated Step 2, deepening the actual bilateral, country-to-country ties between India and Australia. And now, that is leading directly to Step 3, a formalized Indian Ocean deal and the rise of what we call mini-lateralism. Basically, instead of relying on massive, slow-moving, multilateral institutions, security is increasingly being handled by small, agile, deeply integrated groups of aligned nations.
The official documentation actually sums this up perfectly, stating, it signals a shift toward minilateral cooperation in maritime security, maintaining a free, open, and rules-based Indo-Pacific. Minilateralism is really becoming the new gold standard for regional stability. It's faster, it's highly operationally focused, and above all, it's just deeply pragmatic.
All right, Section 6, Exam, Revision, and Recall. We are now initiating our rapid active recall system. I want you to focus entirely on the prompts here.
Lock this matrix into your memory. If you are structuring an analytical response for an exam, this is exactly your framework. Connect the mechanism, things like joint patrols and logistics, directly to the strategic goal of maritime domain awareness and deterrence. Then explicitly link that to the geopolitical impact, balancing Chinese influence and securing vital choke points like the Malacca Strait. Always remember, geography drives mechanics and mechanics drive geopolitics.
Okay, active recall question 1. Think back to the map we reviewed earlier. Why are the Andaman and Nicobar Islands strategically vital for Australia's logistics support? Take a second and formulate your answer.
And here is the precise answer. They provide critical operational access to monitor key shipping routes, most importantly, the Malacca Strait. It is literally the geographic anchor for maritime domain awareness in the eastern Indian Ocean.
All right, active recall question 2. Let's shift over to policy frameworks. What core Indian foreign policy does this maritime cooperation directly reinforce? Got it. The framework answer is, it directly operationalizes India's Act East policy, and it cements India's stated mandate as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. Lock those keywords in.
We'll leave you with this final revision capsule. The India-Australia Maritime Partnership is the physical manifestation of mini-lateral cooperation. It's designed to counter strategic imbalances, explicitly monitor Chinese influence, and legally secure a rules-based Indo-Pacific. Now, the big question you need to consider is this. As these mini-lateral agreements become the dominant security architecture of the 21st century, will traditional, large-scale multilateral institutions eventually just become obsolete? Think about that. Keep analyzing, keep reviewing these frameworks, and use this explainer to maintain your strategic edge.